melody, dancing languidly between the karoo and the savannah, and summer was nearly the same as winter. Maybe that was the reason the colonists believed they could own the place, for it was dry and hot and looked to be dead. Not knowing that no place was dead, they planted a flag on some hill, declared it for their king, and proceeded to forget the ancient names sounding in the crags. Africa, being rich and generous and unpretentious, easily yielded to the partitioning of her face, the morphing of Ngola to Angola, the cutting of the Gold Coast and Johannesburg from her womb, the death of the Kwacha, the burying of her gods, and so forth. Maybe that was another reason the colonists believed themselves to own her. Africa had bent easily. Ethiopia, with her rebellion to Italian annexation, was an anomaly. Africa was, overall, so malleable. By the year 1927, and possibly for the sake of her own survival, Africa had begun to bend herself into irony. That was how it came to be told by Elisa van Zyl, who had herself bent her name from Elisa Miller, which she had bent from the mononym Elisa. That is how it came to be told by this Elisa to her daughters, that once a suckling child was thrown from the breast of a godwoman, gushing milk sprung from the godwoman's breast and into the sky. Thus, the stars of the Milky Way were born. That was how this story ended. Now, this is how it started. This silent interlude. There was a madman who, it was said, had war in his blood. His grandfather had fought in the First Boer War. His father had fought in the Second, and he, in an upward trajectory of tragedy or glory, had outdone them in the Great War of Europe. It was expected that, should renewed freedom of the Witwatersrand mines from the British Empire be imagined, or Europe begin another conflict, the man's son would continue that bloody legacy so efficiently inherited from his forefathers. But as it was on 29 March 1927, which was a sunless day filled with many omens, the man didn't yet have a son. It was hoped that the world and South Africa might hold off from any pending revolutions, so the man might have enough time to rear that fated son, and thus complete his earthly role. His name was John Ashby, and most times he could be found in the city, near the auction house at the corner of Berg Street, hawking newspapers to those passing by. Abram van Zyl found him there. "What does the Governor-General say today?" said Abram. "Good morning, Mr. van Zyl." Remembering his manners, Abram conceded a greeting, and the man read from the placard he brandished. Immorality Act assented. House of Assembly prohibits illicit carnal intercourse between Europeans and natives. A motor car turned up dust as it swerved around the corner, and several pedestrians were left to scold the recklessness of the driver, and to ponder the general decay of morality the city was enduring. Abram had clutched at his chest, but recovered himself. "Let me see," he said, reaching for coins in his pocket. In return, John gave him a newspaper, and Abram immediately scanned it until he finally came to page 14, where the headline read, Act No. 5 of 1927, to prohibit illicit carnal intercourse between Europeans and natives and other acts in relation thereto. With those words, Abram's life tumbled into chaos. The rising foreboding with which much else had happened before then seemed to culminate rather quickly, as though the omens had grown impatient. So there stood Abram, with a madman saying to him, "I hear the Governor-General will be bringing the guillotine."